Hey everyone, it's the Koopa Man. It seems all this month we talked about the concept of heroism and villainy, at least in media. We discussed the concept of heroism and villainy itself, then we discussed anti-heroes and anti-villains, and then we discussed heel face turns when heroes go bad or villains go good. But there's one thing I neglected to talk about until this point. That is, when heroes and villains are done wrong. No, I don't mean when they're narratively given a raw deal by the writers. What I mean is when it's clear that the writer does not know what makes a hero or a villain, and they misapply the label. It's far less of a narrative trope, and far more of a narrative blunder. And you see it a lot in media where the writer is ultimately trying to push their message over telling a story. Fanfictions, particularly ones centered around Mary Sue's, are very guilty of this. And a lot of politically extreme media like leftist stories or chick tracts fall into this as well. But the issue about discussing this phenomenon is, well, sadly a lot of politically active people have a very subjective opinion on who is a hero or a villain. And as such, TV tropes is polluted with a lot of subjective leftist interpretations of the designated hero or villain label. Which is kinda sad and depressing, as despite their biases, the website is normally fairly good at cataloging examples of tropes and narrative cliches. However, this is an easily resolved issue when we remember our definitions. Voltaire's maxim applies. A hero is someone who not only does heroic or virtuous deeds, but are stalwart examples of nobility and virtue. The Greeks used heroes to represent their greatest values, as did medieval Europeans, and even more modern Americans in the invention of the concept of the superhero. And likewise, a villain is someone who does villainous or wicked deeds and are examples of moral depravity and sin. When a hero does heroic deeds but is not a stalwart example of heroism, say if a hero is cowardly or selfish, then that hero is an anti-hero, and there are many different category definitions of anti-hero as we discussed in the previous video. Likewise, when a villain has sympathetic reasonings for their villainy, but still makes the selfish villainous choice, they might be an anti-villain. Simple as. Therefore, a designated hero is someone who neither does heroic deeds nor acts in a heroic manner, but the narrative of the story says that they are. It's really quite simple when you think about it. Unlike an anti-hero, a designated hero acts selfishly and contemptuously, but gets no retribution for it, neither from the characters around them, their own conscience, or even the story narrative itself. And there is no greater example than... Oh, god damn it, not again.
Ayumi, Jack Sully.
As if on cue. The last time I let you do one of these, you got me put on a wanted list. Now you're choosing to piss off the Avatar fanbase? Give me one good reason why I shouldn't toss you out the airlock.
Am I wrong? He's no better than those Chaos Skates.
Alright, you got me there. The floor is yours. I'll just go make some coffee. Don't take too long, and don't kill anyone.
He betrays you, Ayumi, not for some ideals, but because he's a bitter paraplegic who's got injured in a 5-hour-long operation and then proceeds to steal his company's property. Also, he doesn't seem to care that much about his Yumi brother who shed this mortal coil. He fails his diplomacy check. Seriously, just get the Blue Navy guys the scrap they clearly wanted. Oblige them. But if you insist on this talking, you should really have chosen a better guy.
You know, for an orc, you seem to care an awful lot about the Humies.
Yo, Yumis, give a good fight. I want to see your kind get better. It means more wah! But anyway, the Blue Navy guys could also be a good fight, but they refuse to advance because the mushroom grave mine hive mind thingy. Also, Sully, the idea that you Yumis have nothing to offer them is a bullfish grok shit lie, and you're a moron. You Yumis can give them things that will improve their lot in life, so that the orcs can have a proper fighting with them.
Those orcs have such strange priorities. But he's right about one thing. The narrative of Avatar does portray Sully and the Na'vi's actions as heroic and justified, despite the fact that at the start of the movie, well, in the supplementary materials to the movie anyway, it's established that the RDA came to Pandora in the first place to search for a rare mineral to solve an extinction-level shortage crisis back on Earth. And after the battle at the end, not one mention of the mass starvation crisis back on Earth. Sully is treated as the new clan leader and gets his hot Na'vi girlfriend, with no mention of the countless starving children and dying elderly back on Earth, because that would be an inconvenient truth to the message that Cameron is pushing. Never mind the fact the RDA could extract the mineral, no, I'm not gonna say its name, the name is very stupid, without harming the tree. We literally just discovered a way to mine without harming tree roots this year.
Two ways, actually. One involves avoiding the life-giving roots, and the other is this. Sorry, Squid. I'll be going now. I gotta war!
Right. Not only could they just mine around the roots, but the Avatar program was made as a form of diplomacy between the humans and the Na'vi to begin with. Jake was selfishly using the program not only to get his legs back, but also once he had sex with a Na'vi woman, decided to use it as a weapon against his fellow human brothers and sisters. And never mind the fact that the Na'vi are connected to a literal hive mind that doesn't consider them on an individual level. There's a reason why the pushback against the Cameron narrative is so fierce, to the point that people even bring in Warhammer 40k into the mix.
Spare us your pity, alien. You gush about your connection with nature, your primal wisdom, but what has it brought you? Where are your marvels of engineering, your voyages of discovery, your great insight into the nature of the universe? Even at our basis, when we dressed as you do, dwelt as you do, hunted as you do, lived as you do, we did more than merely survive. We built wonders. We made great journeys. We forged epics. You have not. You speak so proudly of the plugs dangling from your skulls, little realizing they are but strings and you puppets. What little you have accomplished you attribute to the wisdom of your goddess, who is nothing but the voices of your dead echoing for all eternity. She moors you to the past, serving as a leash that keeps you as little better than apes, sad parodies of civilization that lack the special spark to become something more. We have come to your world in search of resources. Whether your actions drive us back or we take what we want and move on, the outcome is the same. We will depart from your wretched planet, leaving you behind. And in 1,000 years, you will not have changed from this contact with another world. You will remain in your trees, hunting your prey, communing with your goddess, until your sun burns out and your world dies. And above your tomb, the stars will belong to us.
While the narrative does push Sully's actions as heroic, thanks in part to the plot outlined by Cameron's own fucking script, people forget that's not really the case. It's just another form of narrative manipulation to convince the audience of its message, rather than laying out the facts as they are, or staying true to heroic virtues and honor. Storytelling in itself is a form of gaslighting. Well, kind of. But that's why having a concrete idea of what a hero and a villain are is helpful. Another example is Frank Miller's All-Star Batman and Robin. In fact, this example is so bad, it killed the entire DC All-Star line. Let's break it down. He kidnaps Dick Grayson, age 12, and forces him to live in a cave eating rats, even beating up Alfred if he dared to feed him, just because he wants a crime-fighting child soldier. He smashes through police property and frequently antagonizes Gotham PD, and he picks fights with other heroes of the setting purely as a means of flexing his own dick muscles. And yet nothing he does makes Gotham City any better or safer. In spite of this, the Miller-written narrative paints him as the ultimate badass hero who gets all the superheroine panties wet. He makes it explicit about how every female character wants to bang him, to the point where it just becomes creepy Mary Sue shit. In fact, I'm not even sure he's really Bruce Wayne. I'm fairly sure that the All-Star Batman is actually Enemy from My Immortal. And how are we sure that My Immortal wasn't a Frank Miller work really? Have we seen them in the same place at the same time? But as I stated before, the designated hero title does often skew into Mary Sue territory, as the required narrative flexing is there. One could say Mary Sue is a designated hero, at least most of the time. It's not a perfect circle, but it's close. Designated heroes, like any Mary Sue, have the narrative flex and reality warp to try to fool the viewer into believing they're the good guy. It's propaganda at its finest. And propaganda cuts both ways because in addition to designated heroes, There are also designated villains. Characters or factions we're supposed to hate because the narrative tells us to, but whose actions aren't really all that malicious. In fact, it's even something that's discussed in the movie Small Soldiers, where a set of action figures come to life, and the hero characters are the villains going after the villain characters who ally themselves with the movie's heroes. All the Gorgonites really want is to find their home planet, whereas the Commando Elites just want to wipe them out because they exist. Huh. Funny. A shitty 90s action movie about living toys did Avatar's plot better than Avatar did. Then there's quite a famous example for PlayStation fans, the Hellghast from Killzone. While the latest game, Killzone Shadowfall, does blur the lines a little bit, the game itself does portray the Hellghast as evil space Nazis. And to be fair, pale skin, red eyes, armor that looks like it came from the Hugo Boss line, but ultimately the narrative of the game is one of the so-called heroes of the story invading their territory and murdering their leaders and destroying their planet. Ironically, falling into the same pitfall as Avatar, but from the reverse. Because the Hellghast are rude to their invaders and kinda look Nazi-ish, they're treated as the bad guys when all they're doing is defending their homeworld. It makes me wonder if Avatar fans would defend the Na'vi if they looked like this. And that was the only change to the story. The narrative is largely the same. The Hellghast under Scholar Visari are defending their homeworld. In fact, in the first game, the attack on Vecta was under the pretense of them trying to retake their original homeworld from the ISA. Anyone who'd argued the Na'vi defending Pandora from the RDA must, in the same breath, also argue to defend the space Nazi-looking motherfuckers from Killzone as well. But because the narrative of Killzone puts you in the shoes of the ISA in most games, you do not question it. You just kill the Hellghast because they're enemies in the game, and the narrative doesn't question it much either. After all, this isn't Spec Ops the line we're talking about. It's funny because far leftists who defend the Na'vi also say that morality in fiction is subjective, and defend groups like the Demons in Doom or Freerun, who are shown to be pure evil races. But if you ask them to defend a group that are objectively not the bad guys, but look like World War II bad guys, they'd scatter like the cockroaches they are. And this is why I spent an entire month trying to explain how heroism and villainy and morality itself is a very static, very objective thing. Sure, we may have some deviations sometimes in the form of anti-heroes or villains who turn from bad to good, but that doesn't change the static definitions being ones of representatives of virtue or vice. The thing about designated heroes is that we are only told as the viewer that they are heroes without it being shown, and when we observe their virtues, we find anything but. The same for designated villains that we're told are evil, but we're shown nothing but reasonable actions in reaction to what the so-called heroes are doing. As I said earlier, storytelling is a form of gaslighting. A good storyteller will convince us of anything they want, provided they're skilled enough. It's why we can root for Aladdin despite him being a thief, or we can jeer at Shinra Electric Company despite them trying to provide basic electricity to the city of Midgard. Because in order to convince us that someone is a hero or a villain, you need to show, not just tell. Shinra has shown that they are willing to do unethical experiments, or at the very least funds the ones being done by Hojo, as well as take an apathetic stance to their form of power generation being provably harmful to the environment and the planet. And Aladdin is a thief surely, but he's only one out of necessity, as he's an orphan boy in an Arabic kingdom and viewed as scum for just existing because of that. In spite of that, he selflessly gives his, admittedly stolen, bread to younger children in greater need, and will risk his neck to save a strange girl who was about to have her hand cut off. It's the things the characters do that make them heroes or villains, not the narrative or the author telling us so. Because at the end of the day, if you're just going to tell us what to think about your characters without fooling us into coming to that conclusion ourselves, you're not a storyteller, you're a petty tyrant. But that's all I got. This has been the Koopa Man. If you like this video, leave a like and subscribe if you want to see more. Be sure to check out the other videos on my channel for more, as I spent all this month talking about heroes and villains, and may do so again in the future. If you have other examples of designated heroes and villains I didn't discuss, talk about them in the comments, as I'd love to hear what I missed. And until next time, game on.